Hey YouTubers, morning. Guys, I'm going to do a book review on How to Build a Tin Canoe by Robb White. It's Confessions of an Old Salt. It's sort of a biography, autobiography. And let's start at the beginning. I was watching Brad's channel on BC Truck. Brad did a video on said, I've had an epiphany. I like Brad. He said he realized he was in his shop making stuff and he started listening to the news and he was getting all pissed off. And he realized most of the time, all day long, he's working in his yard, he's happy, he's doing stuff with his wife, he's happy, he's making his knives, he's happy. And he starts listening to the news, he goes crazy, like he said, that doesn't give him joy. He's getting upset over the news. And he started realizing when he was younger, he never listened to the news, he was happy all the time. So his epiphany was start doing things that give him joy. And when he talked about when he was younger, didn't listen to the news and he was happy, as you get older, you have more experiences. And in my experience, the more I think about, I start connecting with other things, makes me think of other things. So I go off on a tangent. And the older you get, the more experience you've had, so the more easily you go off on a tangent because everything reminds you of everything else because everything. So when Brad was saying when he was younger and things gave him joy more back then, it made me think of Robb White. Robb White, he wrote a sentence once, I can't remember exactly, I'm going to paraphrase, but when he got out of the Navy in Puerto Rico, his future wife, 17-year-old girlfriend, came to stay with him, and he was living like in a little house by the ocean. He was making a living building little boats. He had a little scooter and he had a sailboat. And Robb wrote that the rest of his life was spent trying to get back to that time in his life where he had a 17-year-old girl holding on to him on the back of a motor scooter, riding around town, going to his sailboat and being his own boss. He said that was the high point of his life, and those things gave him joy. And that made me think of Robb when Brad said when he was younger. And I said, I haven't read this book in a long time. So I got it out and I read it the other day, and I thought, this would be a good book review. Robb White, this is the only book he ever wrote. Sadly, he passed away in 2006. He had I don't know exactly what the disease was, but it was one of those that was going to become very nasty eventually. And so there was a risky operation, and the doctor said either the operation would cure him or he wouldn't get off the table alive. And he did not get off the table alive. So, but it was a brave decision and didn't work out, but I don't think he would have done any other way. Robb reminded me of if Huckleberry Finn had to grow up and get a job and have a family. This is a wonderful book, even if you're not into the things that Robb White wrote about. And I like the book initially because it's relatable to me for many ways, because he writes about fishing and boating and building things. He lived in North Florida and in South Georgia and was very interested in old Florida history and having adventures. And so even if you're not interested in those things and not related to you, he also, more importantly, I think, had a really gifted style of writing. I'm not saying he was as good as Mark Twain, but he had that kind of style. It seemed to come natural to him. When he wrote, I felt like he was just talking to me. He was telling a story. Robb isn't a great writer, but he was a wonderful storyteller. One of my favorites in here, even if you don't like Florida or fishing or boats, you couldn't stand them. There's one story in particular in here about how he met a slave on a tugboat. It's just perfect. It's a perfect short story. It's one of my favorites in the book. But he also has recipes, and he's got little adventures, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful life. I also like how when he starts out each chapter, he sort of, just like Mark Twain did, I guess a lot of people did back in the old days, he describes what's going to be in the coming chapter. And it has gotten a lot of good reviews. Here's an interesting thing about Robb White, though. As he would write about his life, he talked about his family and how his father was a famous writer and his sister wrote. And at that time, I started reading this woman who was named Bailey White, and she wrote about her family. And that one book Bailey wrote of short stories, her first one, Mama Makes Up Her Mind, that's one of the best collection of short stories I've ever read. I recommend it highly. But then I started thinking, you know what? When I was a kid, there was a writer named Robb White. He wrote a book called The Lion's Paw. It ruined my life. Between Robb White and The Lion Paw and Yule Gibbons, The Beachcomber's Handbook, they both ruined me. When I found out that there were people living on sailboats and just didn't have a job and they were just sailing around having adventures, that was for me. So Robb White has come to find out his father, Robb White, is the fourth. Robb White the third ruined my life with that book. But this was his son, and Bailey White, I find out, was his daughter or his sister. So it's like an interesting writing family that have had an influence on me. So I recommend it for the writing style, for the fascinating, wonderful stories about Florida, just getting to know kind of a little bit of a curmudgeon, get off my lawn type of guy. It's a very independent-minded person and very skilled. If I had a couple criticisms, and they're mild, and it's just my own fault maybe. I find sometimes in the book, if you're not into boats, he goes into great detail sometimes about a boat engine that has me in the weeds. I don't know what he's talking about sometimes. I'm not that mechanical. And even some of the boat building aspects, he goes into really strong detail that I don't know how it moves the narrative along. But he did it for some reason. Like sometimes I make videos on YouTube and I put in music that I love, and I get people hate my video because do they think I put this music in because I wanted them to hate it? No, I loved it, and there was a reason for it. I'm sure there's a reason why he went into great detail on some things that I didn't feel that was necessary. Like he'll constantly give the Latin name for trees and things he's talking about. That's interesting at first. After a while, it becomes like the names in those Russian novels, like here comes another person with 17 syllables, hyphen 16 syllables, their first and last name, like. So it's a minor point. It's very well written. It just flows. It's like he's talking to you. A wonderful person, interesting person, wonderful stories, and if you're the slightest bit interested in boat building or fishing or building things or Florida or old Florida, or living off the land, catching your own food. It's a wonderful, wonderful book, and it makes me like Bailey White and their father even more for their writing tradition they seem to have passed on to each other. I'll leave with this last comment. Back in 2019 and 2020, before COVID, one of the most popular books being sold was by a woman who was recommending people just declutter their life of possessions. She said, if something doesn't give you joy, just get rid of it. And the thrift stores were filling up with stuff. People were getting rid of a lot of stuff that did not give them joy. And I think that's what Robb White did. He spent his life getting rid of things that didn't give him joy. And the things that did, he wrote down in this book. So I recommend it highly. If you get a chance, check out Bailey White, Mama Makes Up Her Mind. If you have children, definitely do not let them read The Lion's Paw or The Beachcomber's Handbook by Yule Gibbons, because it's over for them. They'll never want to work again at a regular job. So, also, if you want to build a tin canoe, right? Hope you like this review. I put up new videos every week. Been doing it for 14 years. Got over 1,000 videos. Bunch of cool playlists and cool people I feature on my channel over social media with night anyway. And like I said, new stuff every week. And take care. See you out there.